Hi there. Welcome to what is our first podcast for the Northern Triangle Mentor Network. We thought we would give this a bit of a try to sort of see how we can engage with our mentors and delve into their wonderful minds and help the academics that are across the universities of Leeds, Manchester, and Sheffield through their commercialization journeys. One of the key topics that mentees are always looking for support on and has come up during our one-to-one sessions is around market research and customer discovery. Whilst a lot of our academics understand their technology very well, they're not entirely sure how their customers will use it and what the market looks like. So today, I've invited Nicky Dibben from Invention Marketing, who's been part of our mentor network since the beginning and has been a great help to a number of our academics, both in our sprint and boost sessions. She has a wealth of experience of working with deep tech businesses to help them understand that sort of proper marketing from the foundations onwards is an essential vehicle for growth. Thanks for taking time to be with us today, Nikki. Do you want to give a bit of background? How have you come to work with deep tech businesses and help them on their marketing journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact, by the way, that you put the universities in alphabetical order. So there's no favoritism here. Yeah, so my background is I started life as a computer scientist, got my first degree in computer science from Cambridge way back when. Funnily enough, I went to the what I call the new lab yesterday to realize it's 24 years old. But to me, it's still the new lab, but never mind. Yeah, realized that I didn't really want to continue being a computer scientist. So my first job was in intellectual property management and tech transfer. I then sort of segued into various marketing roles. And then more than 25 years ago now, I set up on my own because I was fed up of marketing being seen as this fluffy thing. And I would sit in the corner and, do pretty pictures and, write some flyers. So I walked out, which was, in hindsight, probably the best decision I made. And then didn't really know what I was going to do. And then somebody from the regulatory department in Vodafone rang up and wanted me to do some market analysis for them. And that was kind of my first client, really. And so I've been working for myself ever since, apart from 3 years when I was VP marketing for a global telecoms equipment company out in New Zealand. So I've kind of seen both sides of it. I'm not sort of like, I'm not a consultant in ivory tower, telling people how to do stuff. I've actually, grow a company, from 12 to 24 million in a year, but by all of the same things that we actually need to apply early on as well. So that's kind of where I've ended up. And then the last couple of years, I've really, really been focusing much more on the advisory side of things, which then sort of stretches in two directions. It stretches to the mentoring, which I do a lot of for the universities around the country, and then to sort of consulting / VP marketing type stuff at the other end, where I work more in depth with clients once they've raised money.
Awesome. Well, thanks for setting the scene. And I guess we've got our academics who are listening and watching this. They've probably heard of customer discovery and market research, and they know it's kind of important, and they're gonna have to do it at some point. But essentially, break it down in sort of its simplistic terms. What it is and why is it critical that they start on that journey as early as they can.
Yeah, well, I mean, the main reason is that you don't go to market with a technology. You actually have to figure out what the market actually wants. And so the number of times you see so much, wasted time, wasted effort, wasted money because we don't actually know what the market wants. And so we end up with all these, solution seeking problems, which is never really a way to go about it. So at its most simplest, really, market research is figuring out what the world looks like without you in it, right? So it would be figuring out, what's going on in the market, what the trends are, what markets you can get into, what the dynamics are. Really figuring out, I said, what's going on even without you. So, for instance, if you've got some technology that you think you'll be selling into the water industry, you can profile the water industry. What's going on, how many players are there, what's happening. They're all very AI phobic because they've got all this massive entrenched infrastructure that they don't really want you putting your AI bots in their pipes, and so just figuring out what's going on in the market. You can't always size a market because actually, especially in deep tech land, you're kind of creating a new market where you can map all of the stuff around it. So market research is basically objective. I'm getting my objective and my subjective here. So market research is objective because there's all the public domain stuff that's out there, right? And then the flip side of that, so the two parts of the same picture, is your customer discovery. Now that is much more subjective because that's about putting it's in the context of you and what you're doing and what your technology is and where you're going to fit in the market. So that's much more, okay, now with us in the market, what do people actually want from us and how do we fit in this market and what do we compete with and how do we need to talk to our customers? So you need to both sides of the equation.
And as say, yeah, I guess that's quite an important differentiation to have early on. So it gives you those sort of guiding foundations as you go forward. As I say, rather than trying to squeeze your product into the marketplace, it's trying to figure out what customers actually need, but also what's happening elsewhere in the market. So if market research is that bigger picture, as you say, and customer discovery is zooming more into you and your product. What are are there any other differences? What's one trying to achieve over the other? What should you have kind of like towards the end of this process, or at least kind of, what are the things that you should be then focusing on going forward?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. So it's also not one and done. They sort of feed into each other in a in a nice circle. So I think what we can do is sort of delve down into each of them to a little bit more detail and how we go
Mm.
about that. But for instance, if you think about right, we want to do some market research, right? So we diverge in terms of looking at the market and then thinking about, well, what are the opportunities in the market then? This is an objective view of the marketplace. Where can we see the gaps? Where can we see the needs, etc. And then we can converge by actually putting our strategic thinking hat and going, okay, what opportunities do we think that we want to pursue? So you have to turn that market research, from its, objective form into something that relates to you. So you kind of go, okay, we're making some market decisions here. Like for instance, we might have gone, oh, we could be applicable in all the utilities, right? We could be electric, we could be gas, we could be water, right? We've analyzed the market. Actually, if we look at that, maybe the water market is most attractive right now. I keep coming back to water because that was when I was VP marketing. We said our first massive contract for one of our new products was water, and the boss kept saying electric, 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 and I keep saying it's going to be water. It's going to be water. And that's where we're going to get our first opportunity because I did all the right research. And the answer was water because I'd analyzed the markets and figured out that that was going to be more attractive. So yeah, so we make some market decisions then based on the objective look at the market. Then we can feed that into the customer discovery process where we start doing some diverging again. Okay, we've got massive lists of who we need to speak to. We go out there, we talk to lots of people, we get lots of information. We can come back to what that looks like in a second. But then again, we need to analyze all of that. And then we need to make some customer decisions. Who within that market are we targeting? What is it that they want? And then we've kind of got a hypothesis that we then can go back round again. Okay, now how do we delve into this in more detail? So we kind of get this lovely, circle going on. So, and it's never one and done because we're always going out and testing hypotheses and improving our hypotheses.
That's a really important point as well. That yeah, just because you have an assumption early on doesn't mean that is going to continue throughout the whole journey. And I think it's one of those things that I've certainly seen with academics is trying to find that early beachhead market, as we like to call it, and it comes from that market research piece is kind of sort of like, where do we want to sort of try first? It's not a case of like, oh, we can do all of these and we're going to do every single one, because at the end of the day, you've got to focus on something to give you that direction. And in that early stages, say you're just testing hypotheses at the moment. You're trying to sort of find out whether the data does align with what your initial thoughts are.
Exactly. And that's where the market research is really, really good when it comes to beachhead markets, because if you think about it, so it's about the dynamics of the market as well. So for instance, again, sort of coming back to electricity, you would think, oh, let's look at the electricity market in Latin America. Oh, that's going to be the same. Well, actually, Brazil, I think, has something like 350 electricity utilities. Mexico, one. So very, very, very different worlds, even though they're in theory the same market. And so your market research can help with those beachhead markets, because again, if you imagine the world is largely sort of three tiers of players. You've got the really, really big players, you've got the really, really tiddly players, and then you've got the middle players. And quite often the middle is your perfect place to start for a beachhead market, because it's big enough to be attractive, but it's small enough that you could actually get into it. And then also those tier two players, they're hungry to elevate. So they're more likely to have the budget, whereas the tier three players won't. So you can use market research to not only identify the market you want to be in, but at the next level down, the dynamics of that individual market, how do the players stack up? So then your beachhead market has kind of got two elements to it, not just the market, but the players within it.
And I guess it's not just the hard data that you're looking for, is it? Like what are the other things that you're trying to discover in this sort of phase?
Yeah. This is where I get a little bit textbooky. So we're going to talk about qualitative and quantitative, but so what I'll do is, so just sort of to recap on that, the whole point about market research is that market research is not about us, but it's about the market. So some of the things that we think about with market research, right, is it's about the bigger picture. It's quite generic because of the fact that it's objective. It's mainly public domain information, and it's quite often, consolidated information because it is, it's what's out there in the public domain and opinions that have been condensed together. So what we should be aiming to learn from market research, we've got a few notes here which are quite useful. I did some training the other day. So it's a bit about, what are the markets in which we can compete? How big is the market and what are the trends? What are our best or biggest applications? What does the competitive environment look like? And has what we're doing already been done? That's quite a key one, because if it's already been done, it'll be out in the public domain. But then also, if we look at the different types of market research, now I've got to admit, I'll try not to get too textbooky here, but I have done a 6-month module where I literally have a professional certificate in societal and market research, if anybody would like to see that. Mainly because when I did my marketing degree, I liked the market research module so much, I liked the lecturer so much, that I went on and did his 6 months just market research. So the way market research stacks up is there's two types and two different axes. So you've got secondary market research and primary market research. So secondary is really the stuff that's already out there in the public domain. So that's your Google searches, you're reading your industry reports, you're looking at social media, you're reading conference papers, etc. And then you've got your primary research, which is the research that you use and start going out and doing yourself. Now, this can overlap with customer discovery, because what we're doing is we're figuring out, we're doing surveys, we're experimenting, we're observing, we're doing focus groups. But in theory, in market research land, it's still objective because we're doing that without putting ourselves in the equation. But then you can use those market research techniques in customer discovery. And then the other two ways it stacks up are both qualitative and quantitative, and they feed into each other as well. So qualitative is very much, the opinions and the thoughts and the feelings and the soft stuff. And that is much more where, you're reading things in the media and you're getting people's opinions, even though they're meant to be, they're external as opposed to necessarily, objective. And that's all the kind of the thoughts and feelings stuff. And then we get quantitative stuff, which is hard numbers, 68% of that, and the market's worth this much, and these are the government stats. But again, the reason we need them both is that if you only have the qualitative stuff, then it's really hard to prioritize, because all we've got is this lovely touchy-feely stuff. But if you only have the quantitative stuff, you miss some of the inputs and some of the nuances and some of the patterns. So again, what we do is we iterate between them. So we'll do our qualitative stuff, whether it's primary or secondary, we do both. And then we start seeing patterns. Actually, these are the themes that keep coming up. And then what we can do is dive into some quantitative stuff where we go, okay, these are 3 themes that keep coming up. Let's gauge how strongly people feel about these things and how we can start to put some numbers behind it. And then similarly, if you've got a pile of numbers, you can then go, okay, we've measured 10 things. These are the 3 most important things. Now let's get some of the touchy-feely qualitative thoughts and opinions behind those. So again, it's not one and done. You iterate between your qualitative and your quantitative market research as well.
Well, that leads on quite nicely to what I was thinking about, like, sort of for my next question was, once you've started getting that research and you've got, lots of data and you start into some really good, interesting data points and things for you to reflect on, what should you be doing once you've kind of got it? Like, yes, it's great. And, rather than just putting it on a shelf somewhere and sort of going, well, we ticked that box. What are the things that you want, if there was like a number of areas or factors you want to be drawing out that might then lead into your customer discovery? What are some of those top things you want to be looking for in that?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things really is to work out, what decisions do you want to make, right? And this is what I sort of call backwards market research. You work out what decisions do we want to make. For instance, do we want to select between 3 different product options or between different markets? What decisions do we want to make? And then you work back to, well, what data do we therefore need to gather to support those decisions. Okay, how do we then go about gathering that data? So you kind of go down, and then you kind of come back up again, because you will get to where you've got all this data. And to a certain extent, this has to be old school. I mean, this is literally, in the old days, I would literally phone somebody, have a whole conversation with them, and this is what I call the closed envelope theory. And I think it still applies today. And I actually think old school, especially for market research and customer discovery, is very, very much what we need to be doing, because you can't Google your way through, figuring this all out. So closed envelope theory is you talk to somebody and you have some questions, but actually you're really more having a conversation. And we'll come on to conversations a bit more when we talk a bit more about customer discovery. But at the end of the conversation, we say, who else should I be talking to? And they give you two names, and you talk to those people. And then at the end of the conversation, you say, who else should I be talking to? And you get to where everybody you've been speaking to in terms of experts feeds you back into the same pool of people, at which point you've kind of closed your envelope there. So it's never one and done. And the same is true with sort of patterns. It literally comes down to old school. And even if you have sort of a quantitative survey, and then at the end of it, you have some open-ended questions, you literally have to, like, whether it's printing out 100 bits of paper and putting them on a table, whether it's putting them in 100 lines of a spreadsheet, you then have to literally look at them all one by one, start grouping them all into themes, start seeing the patterns and the trends and the subject areas that emerge, because you could probably AI your way through some of this, but that's the only way that it's going to work, is it's properly old school, because otherwise you miss some of the nuances and you miss some of the outliers, or you just get this like common flat line through everything. And actually, sometimes it's the outliers and the nuances that make life much more exciting and make you think, oh, actually, we've maybe really seen something we should be looking at in more detail. So it's really tricky, because on the one hand, it's sort of quite nebulous, but on the other hand, you will see patterns, you will see trends, you will then get your next generation of hypothesis, really, to go back out into the world with.
I think also, like, that type of approach actually probably fits quite well with, our audience in terms of the academics, because essentially that's what they're doing. They're doing that in their laboratories. So this isn't something which should be considered like completely alien and sort of like, oh God, this is so far removed from my day-to-day life. Actually, you're doing this in your labs. You're doing this with your experiments. You're doing this on a daily basis. It's just a different lens. It's a different group that you are engaging with, or different data sets, data points. But you're doing that kind of outreach to get those
Yeah.
data points as well.
Yeah. And I think, and then possibly one of the things because I've never lived life in a lab or in the computer lab, but I think one of the things with this sort of market research thing is possibly there's a little bit more of a openness to it. I think with a lot of experiments, kind of, oh, these are the things we're looking for, and it may, I don't know, maybe slightly more bounded. Because I don't know how you do open-ended scientific research. Do you just like leave things lying around and see what in a lab and see what happens to them? I don't know. It's a bit scary, but yeah. So I think with market research, this sort of the minor difference in mindsets. Yes, you have to apply the same scientific rigorous principles, but you also have to be willing to be a little bit more open, because you don't know what you're looking for. You can't parameterize it before you start. You actually have to be willing to hear, to hear answers to questions that you didn't know you were going to get, which is again where the fun comes in, really.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the market research side of it. And then we get into the customer discovery.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that is probably outside of people's comfort zones, because, and a little bit scary, because now you have to talk to people. You've got to sort of go and, as I think they do on kind of like iCure, go and speak to 100 customers as part of your discovery sort of phase. In that, within customer discovery, what are the key things that you're looking to learn at that stage? Is it say, like, this is where it's coming more about you as opposed to the outside view?
Yes.
What are the key things you're trying to learn at this point?
Yeah, well, it's tricky, because on the one hand, it's about you, because we've added the context of you into the market. But on the other hand, it's still about your customers. So you still have to take what we keep talking about, sort of the outside in perspective, and then it's not about what you want to tell the world. It's about what the world needs to hear from you. So again, while you have some hypotheses, it's not like, do you want what I've got? Yes or no. It is very much, what do our customers actually want from us? Do they talk about and perceive the problems that we're solving, in the same way that we think? When we get a bit further down the line, how do our product features match up with what it is they actually want to buy? What other applications have they identified for our technology? Because that's the other thing. If you can be quite open-ended, you can go, well, we've got this. and we can use it for A, B, and C, then people will go, oh, and they can start filling in the gaps. And well, if you can do A and B, then you can probably do D, E, and F as well. And actually, you can probably do this, which is like half A and half B. And so it's just having those conversations and sort of shaping your product. Now, shaping your product is very different from pivoting because one person told you one thing in a meeting. But yeah, and again, with customer discovery, it's about, how do they expect to buy? What's the customer journey look like? Who else in the organization do we need to engage with? So for instance, might be clinicians that want to use your lovely MRI type stuff, but they might have, zero purchasing power. So how do who are the different, people within an organization that we need to be speaking to? So, and the other thing that's really handy that you get to find out about in customer discovery is really this whole thing about routes to market and how people expect to buy. So then this is why looking at your whole supply chain is really useful in customer discovery. If you think, well, I'm here and my end user's here. Well, actually, that's fine, but your end user might only want to buy from preferred partners. They might want to buy from marketplaces. You may never actually end up seeing or selling to your end user. You do need to talk to them, but then figure out how they want to buy and who they want to buy from to make sure that you get the supply chain right. But yeah, there are lots of objections to customer discovery to why people don't want to do it. If you want me to look at some of those.
Say like, I was just wondering if there were some top tips. Yeah. What are the things, like, just to try and reassure people that actually, because one of the things that I found as well that is surprising is that when you ask someone a question, most time people come back with an answer for you. If you reach out to someone and sort of say, could you help me on this? Most people will actually say, yeah, because
Yeah.
people want to help. People are, and they're also inquisitive of like, well, why did you come to me? Or what is it that you're actually trying to do? What is your product? What's the research you're doing? So I think that yes, it does feel a bit scary because it's unknown. You've never done this before. But actually, once you get into it, I find that, yeah, people are quite open and willing to engage and support. But are there any top tips that you've sort of
Yeah.
seen in terms of kind of like engaging?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of funny enough. That's sort of the first two on my list, right? So one is I don't want to waste their time. Okay, well if people have taken a meeting with you, they're probably quite happy to have a chat with you. So to that, I don't like asking for help. Again, you're not necessarily asking for help. You're asking for input and for opinions. Everyone loves to share their opinions. I don't know what to ask. Okay, we'll start with a couple of questions and then see where the conversation goes. I might change my product. Okay, well you might, but not immediately, right? Because again, it comes back down to, you're making notes, you're not making promises. And that's the thing to bear in mind, and I don't know what they're going to say. Well, okay, isn't that kind of the point, that you don't know what they're going to say? Because if you knew what they were going to say, you'd have done it. I think my most important thing about customer discovery, and I use this quote pretty much everywhere I go because I love it so much. It's a book called Ask by a guy called Ryan Levesque. I think literally says, people cannot tell you what they want. They can tell you what they don't want, and they can tell you what they've done before. They can't tell you what they want. And then I use the analogy of like, it's like tea, you're kind of go, oh, what do you want for tea? Don't know, don't mind. Do you want Chinese? No. Do you want Indian? No. Okay, so you've got some opinions as to what you don't want. Oh, we're Chinese last night. So you can tell me what you've done before. You can tell me what you don't want. You just can't tell me what you want. So we start sort of narrowing it down. And I think the most important thing really is it's conversations. It's nothing more than conversations, and it is scary. And the first couple you make, they are scary, but it's conversations. You also have to be quite happy to diverge, which is really hard as a scientist. The diverging bit is really scary because you think you'll never come to any conclusions, but keep the faith in that the patterns will emerge. And then really what I talk about is kind of bum glue, which is very much just sitting at your desk and doing it. You have to make lists, you have to make calls, you have to send emails, you have to follow up. And which is why I was saying about the old school approach. I mean, it genuinely is, okay, you can probably do some more new school approaches, like pop a question on a forum and people might pile in with their answers. But at the end of the day, it's your job to go out and one by one, speak to people and have conversations with people. And you do have to just get over the fear. But if you do frame it in this way, that it's literally just conversations. And also, like, what's the worst that can happen, right? The worst that can happen is that somebody says no, somebody doesn't turn up to a meeting, or someone's rude to you, right? That's just like life, isn't it, right? So if you can, and so if you can get over that, then the rest of it's easy, really.
Yeah. And I think if I look at what we've been doing within the mentor network, is one of the principles around the sprint event that we do. It's giving people that early exposure into that, they're going into a room. They've got a dozen people that they've never met before. They don't know who these people are. They're presenting their idea and then they're getting feedback and they're being asked questions and they're asking questions of them. And as we say, they're only opinions. They're not facts. These are things for you to go away and reflect on and absorb and pull out the key points. But if you keep on hearing the same thing or the same questions being asked, that's probably something you need to focus on and try and find out what the answers are, or reposition how you're telling your story, sort of type thing. So I think it is like, yeah, hopefully it's kind of a bit of an early step into that
Yeah.
customer discovery. Like, oh crap, like who am I talking to? I don't know. Like this is out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
But I
Well, that's
think
the other thing, because we do find that with the sprint sessions, quite often people will, present 10 slides and then stop, because they don't actually know what questions to ask. And so I sort of find as the mentor, I don't just answer the questions. I actually tell them the questions they should be answering and then answer them. But as you say, but then that early foray gets them into thinking, okay, I've now been told some of the questions that I should be asking. So they're not just learning, they're not just getting feedback. They're actually learning about the questions that they should be answering, which then helps them when they go out into the world. Because they go, okay, all right, okay, so those mentors from my 10 sessions with those 10 mentors, I've probably had, 30 different questions, whatever. Okay, now I've got something to start with. They've analyzed, they told me what the gaps are and what I'm doing. They told me what the confusing bits are and what I'm doing. They told me about the disconnects and the contradictions and what I'm doing. Okay, these are the questions I need to start getting answers to. And then that can fuel some of the customer discovery work that you go out and do.
yeah. And I think that kind of, yeah, there's one of the things that, and I know I've stolen this from you a number of occasions, is around, particularly in those sprint sessions, is that as much as we try and brief the academics to come in and sort of try and talk about their research in a non-technical way, that they're not presenting a paper, they're not doing a poster or talking at a symposium or something like that. They still always come in and overcomplicate the thing that they are trying to do in the project that they're working on. And so with customer discovery, how does that make, I guess it forces you to make your technology human, as you
Yeah.
say. But why is that so important? It, I think that it's something that we try and hit home as hard as we can. So yeah, why is it important?
Yeah, and I think it's only when you get out in the real world that it hits you. I mean, and this is the thing. So there's multiple parts to this. So I do talk a lot, as you say, about translating technology into human. And that's one of the key things, because that feeds into the fact that even people who are in your space aren't always going to know what you're talking about, because it may be new to them or maybe adjacent to what they're doing, or the whole point of a lot of this research is that it is new. So really, the reason we need to do this technology to human translation piece is because A, we need to take this outside in perspective, and we need to put ourselves in the mind of our customers. B, it gives us better language to use. So if we start going out and talking to customers, and one of the things I talk about a lot also is like, ask people to reflect back to you what you've said, not repeat back to you what you've said, because that proves that they understand it. But it also gives you new words that you can start using in your messaging, and your messaging gets better. And it's just really, again, sort of, spell out acronyms, just ask people, to reflect back. And then it is just fundamentally about, meeting your customers where they are. And again, the number of times I hear like, oh, my customers don't try hard enough to understand me. And like, no, that's a you problem, right? If somebody doesn't understand you. And so, and then to add to that, you then wrap around this layer that, we're not talking about technology now. We're talking about problems and products and solutions and where we fit, in our customer's world. Because again, it's not about you going, I've got this technology, what do you want to do with it? It's about moving away from being agnostic and actually making some decisions, which again, this whole market research, customer discovery, feeds back into the not being agnostic thing, because you have to make some decisions. And then it just, yeah, put yourself in the mind of your customers. And the first thing that your customers should recognize when they come to your website or whatever is themselves, not you. And it gives us the language to start talking about applications as well. So, I mean, with all the love in the world to the laser lady, she got to sort of slide 10 and it was just about lasers. And slide 11, she suddenly said, so we can start making artificial knees and hips and shoulders that are less prone to antibacterial infection and last longer and are cheaper to make. And I'm going, that's where we should have started. And it's really hard. Don't get me wrong; it's incredibly hard. But you do have to sort of flip it around and really try and put yourself in the mind of your customers. And so if you bear in mind this whole translating tech to human mindset, then it really helps.
Yeah, I think we had a workshop that we did with one of our other mentors with Stephen a few weeks back, and he was very much talking about the emotive aspect, because at the end of the day, that people will buy on emotions. So it's kind of it's understanding, and he was using things like understanding their pains, and so again in that customer discovery phase, that's when you're finding out what those pains are so that, yeah, and as I think, as you said, being able to put yourself in the mind of your potential customers. What are the things that they need to hear, rather than you just telling them what you think they
Yeah.
need.
But it's also worth bearing in mind a little segue into pains and stuff here, because so much of the rhetoric is about, you need to find your customers' pain points and prod them and poke them and exacerbate them and make them desperate to buy your stuff. And actually, there's two sides to this, because on yes, that is a valid approach to market. If you're solving a massive pain points, you can properly articulate that, you can deliver a solution, great. The other side to that is the vitamins market. So the pain is the headache where you're selling aspirins. The flip side to that is that there actually are applications and markets which you're just helping them be a bit better, a bit quicker, a bit whatever else, a bit get to market quicker, a bit, increase uptime of your production line, whatever it might be. And that's more of a kind of a vitamins market, because you're not coming in with this world changing thing. You're coming in with something which is more incremental and evolutionary than massively revolutionary. And that is still a very, very valid market. And they may not be quite as sexy, but you know what? Some of them, are really quite sexy if you look at the numbers. And so where people go wrong is, so that's more your vitamins market, right? You're selling something that just helps keep things healthy and keep things running smoothly and keep things a bit better. But where people go wrong is they try and either fix a pain problem with a vitamin, right? Because no amount of headaches will make it, no amount of vitamins will make a headache go away. So it's mismatched messaging. Or where they kind of try and like manufacture this pain point when there really isn't one. All people want is for their life to be a bit better and make things a bit cheaper and make things a bit quicker. And if you've got technology that goes, you used to have 6 stages in your whatever it is, now you only have 4 because we've combined these, whatever. That there's still a market for that. So don't go trying to manufacture these artificial pain points, because nobody is awake at 3 a.m. thinking about how to cut 2% off their OPEX budget. But at the same time, if you go in and say, we've got something that will cut 2% off your OPEX budget, the world will be interested. But don't go, is your OPEX budget keeping you awake at night? It's just nonsense, right? So you have to match what you've actually got with what the world actually wants and put it in the right bucket.
Yeah, but I think, as you say, I think the fundamental part of that is trying to put yourself in that position and think in that mindset, as opposed to it just being, I have this product, you need it, therefore people will buy it, kind of thing. And so I think it is very much like, yeah, how do we translate that? And I guess that kind of like links me like into my next question, really, is because I'm like, we've done it. So people they've done their market discovery. They've kind of they've done their market research. They see what the big picture is. They've spoken to some people, what do you do with it next? Like like, how do you bring it all together? Or is it just 2 things that you say, well, Nikki said that I had to do these 2 things and I did these 2 things. And I just filed it. What is it that, what is it that comes after that? What does it inform?
Yeah. So in the real world, right, life iterates. So some of the ways to look at this is like, so what both market research and customer discovery do is they inform us such that we have a number of hypotheses that we believe to be true. They still might be quite woolly, so we need to, make them more specific. We need to include things, we need to discount things. So if you think of it as kind of, we've got, this is our current understanding of the world, right? We then unleash our team, onto the world, and we start having conversations with customers. And we start, in terms of, this is when we're actually moving into, sales territory, if you like, right? So we've got our hypothesis. We think these people are going to want to buy this thing for these reasons. Okay, let's go and test that. Let's go and talk to lots of people. And then we learn from that. So we go, what worked, what didn't work, what resonated, what did people go, what? What didn't people understand? What did people really grasp onto? What did people correct for us? What words did they use instead of the words that we used? And then, and this is where the sort of, again, comes back down to the bum glue thing. You then have to sit down and go, what have we learned? What's new? What's different? What do we need to change? And then this is where you refine things. And then you get the next iteration of your hypotheses, which are going to be, better and tighter and cleaner and all those good things. And then you keep repeating it, but you need to build into it that time that you spend to actually process everything. It doesn't happen by itself. You have to just sit down. And again, I've used this example a lot, but because it's real, I had one client who they spent so much money on sales and sales and sales, but they didn't really have a really clear understanding of what they were selling, who they were selling it to, why it was important. And so they were getting nowhere. And so we literally said, okay, what do we think is our understanding right now of our messaging and our audience? Then sales guys would go out for a whole week and they would just, make as many calls as they could. I mean, I'm not necessarily a fan of the cold calling thing, but this was the context in which they were operating because they were sort of doing enterprise sales. So they kind of had an endless, boundless list of people they could, could contact. They'd have as many calls as they could. At the end of the week, we would have a team call. Well, what worked? What didn't work? Who did you speak to? What markets were most interested? What do people tell you were talking rubbish about? What do people really latch onto? Then over the weekend, I would take all of that and I would refine the messaging. And I go, okay, right. We've tightened this bit. We've removed that word. We've got 3 bullet points. And we've actually deleted one and put an extra one in. Then on Monday, repeat. And in 6 weeks, those guys got more meetings than they'd had in 18 months.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you necessarily need to compress it into that tighter timeline. I mean, I was being paid by the minute, so clearly they wanted to compress it, into that timeline. But that's your whole, that's life, right? It's never one and done. But it's about kind of going, okay, we're not just going to go out and do this stuff and then put it in a drawer. We're going to discuss it. We're going to talk about it. We're going to have a team meeting. We're going to make some decisions. Decisions are really good to make, right? So it's not just this woolly amorphous thing. It's saying, okay, what are the patterns? Okay, what do they mean to us? Okay, what does that therefore mean we need to change? Okay, now we think this is what we're going out into the world with. And you can do whatever cadence you want. We did a weekly cadence. It could be that you do a monthly cadence. It could be that you do a 2-monthly cadence. Whatever is working for the industry and the sector and the tech that you're talking about. But unless you sort of close that loop, the market research is just going to sit in a drawer, or you're just going to keep on blindly, doing what you always did.
Yeah, and I think it is that as I say, there's a risk in just sort of saying, well, we've done that piece, we understand exactly what our customers feel right now, and then we're just going to keep on plowing forward on that sort of path without then re-engaging, without then getting feedback, without then going, oh, well, we made these changes. What do you think to these changes? Or how are you actually using this once you've got it in your hands and things like that? So
it's really one layer, isn't it? So we start with one layer and then we make some decisions and then we go to the next layer. So we're getting narrower and deeper each time we do this. So the first time we do it, it'll be a broad brush approach. Then we'll make some decisions. Okay, now we can go back to the same people and go, okay, we've listened to what you said. We're now going deeper because we're only in your industry. And we'll go, sort of narrower because we're only in your industry, deeper because we're now talking about product features, not just applications. And you keep on, the only way you properly break the loop is when, somebody gives you real cold hard money, right? At which point you go, okay, we've cracked it. Now we move on and make that repeatable and scalable and profitable.
and I think that's kind of where I was just thinking was, yes, this is the process really, which is helping you go from that MVP to P at the end of the day. It is that thing of sort of saying, well, yeah, what will actually go into market? What will this look like? But also and that's an important part of the process, particularly across all different ways, whether you're sort of acquiring customers, but also that, when you're going out for investment and things like that, when people are sort of saying, okay, how do you know this is what the market? And if you haven't got that data, if you haven't got information, and well, we've spoken to 100 people and these are the people, and these are people who are quite interested in what we're doing, that they've had a poke around with it. They pulled it apart and put it back together again for us. You're proving your viability to lots of different people, not only customers, but investors. So it is a really important part of that journey, isn't it?
It is. And it's all about traction. I mean, we were, at Klein last week and we spoke a lot about traction, and traction in deep tech is really tricky because you've got a long time to market. You've got complex technologies. You've probably got complex buyers. You've probably got multiple people you need to sell to. You probably need to do a lot of education. So how do we go about proving traction in the time it'll take to get properly to where we're profitable and scalable and repeatable and all those good things. And so how do we demonstrate traction? And, traction is not kind of going, oh, we did some research and we've got some lovely logos now on our screen. It's not people going, yeah, if you made it in pink, I'd build it, go away. It's real conversations with real people that you can document. And it's, it's letters of intent and it's joint ventures and it's a concept project and it's all that good stuff. And so if you can say, yes, we spoke to these 100 people and this is the feedback that we got, that they are real indicators of traction, not just kind of all the vanity metrics that we see.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like we did 10 accelerators and here are all the badges for these.
Yeah.
But not that I'm dissing
Yeah.
accelerators, but it's brilliant. Well, I think we've covered a lot in a very short space of time.
Let's go
And
into tech display, but
yeah, I mean,
watch it
well,
on
I
so
think
much.
that's our job. We're used to doing that at the sprint of watching people melt down and but still have lots of fun. But no, I think it's been really helpful. It's been really good to sort of have a chat with you and just sort of hear your thoughts on two really important things that a lot of our academics are going to be going through over the coming months and probably even years and things like that. So deep tech's not quick. If
It's not quick, but the only final point I was sort of going to make was that, sorry, you're going to ask me a question, I can make a final point, but I'll make a pre-final point, which is that the textbooks are overcomplicated, right? They make everything, textbooks make things so much more complicated than they need to be. And really, all we're trying to do here is introduce our academic world to the real world. And every time we do something, we're just putting one more piece in the jigsaw, and then we're putting another piece in the jigsaw, and then we might put the quarter piece in, and then we might put a few straight lines, and then we might put the green bits in. But it's not done until you put that final 10,000th piece in it, and it literally is. I mean, how do you build a jigsaw, right? You look at the jigsaw and think, oh my god, that's 1,000 pieces. I'm never going to be able to do that. How do you do it? You start sourcing it, whether it's by colors, whether it's by edge pieces, whatever it might be that works for you. So you start sorting it, and then you go, okay, right, now I think I could tackle the green bits, and now I think I've got a straight line, and it's the whole how do you do a jigsaw, how do you eat an elephant? You just have to start somewhere, anywhere with something small, and have the confidence that you may not have the picture on the box, but that there's 1,000 pieces and they're going to make a jigsaw.
Yeah. No, it does lead very nicely into my question actually. To wrap things up with is, okay, yeah, they've got the pieces out of the box. What's the first thing? What if there was like something that someone could go and do this week or in the next few weeks? What's that first step that someone should take? Is it that research or is it just picking up the phone? What would you say is the first bit?
I think it would be, think about what your first hypothesis is going to be, even if it's very broad, even if it's got multiple parts to it. So you might say, we think we can be used for A or B or C. And we think we can be used in the markets of 1 and 2 and 3, right? That already gives you a 3x3 square, which is 9 things, right? And so then go, okay, right, what do we want to narrow down, right? Instead of being A, B, and C, we want to pick a letter, right? And instead of being 1, 2, and 3, we want to pick a market. Okay, what information do I need to start making those decisions? And then you'll get down to the next area, which, okay, now I've picked like 1B as the square I'm gonna play in. How do I break 1 down into all of its bits and then make some other decisions? How do I break B down into all of its bits and then make some more decisions? But I think you need to have some form of hypothesis to go out into the market with, even if it's broad. It has to be from the perspective of your customers, because again, it's very unlikely that you'll be able to ring somebody and go, we've got a sexy new plastic. Can I talk to you about it? Because they'll be like, what do you want to know? So you do need to have a starting hypothesis and maybe 1 or 2 questions that you'd like the answer to, like, is 2 more important than 1? Is B more important than A? What are the decisions I'm trying to make? So if you kind of go, this is my hypothesis, these are the decisions I need to make, these are 3 questions I'd quite like answering. That gives you enough of an armory to then to go out and talk to people and say, I would like to talk to you about 1, 2, 3, A, B, and C. I'm trying to solve for this problem, make these decisions. And this is what I currently think the world looks like. What do you think? You'll start a conversation.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up. So thank you for your time. I appreciate being able to have this conversation and I say this will hopefully be the first of many for the mental network going forward, and we'll be sort of picking up some new topics along the way to discuss and deep dive. I'm sure we could talk about a million things, to be fair, me and you, but
And
I
then
might have.
the other thing is that I'm always at home to people pinging me and sort of going, can we talk about this? Can we talk about that? Can we talk about this? Because the whole world of commercialization, there's so much in it. You've got your tech stuff, you've got your money stuff, you've got what I do, which is everything else that is not those two things, designing and building a business. So if people go, oh, look, we'd love a more detailed session on customer discovery, or actually we'd love to talk about value propositions, or actually, what do you mean by positioning? Then, I think just let me know. And then, because they're all part of the armory that we can, help people with.
No, appreciate it. Well, thank you. And join us next time for our next podcast.